Elevated horror is truly one of the greatest subgenres to rise in popularity and establish itself among the overall genre. For as much nostalgia as we all have for the slashes of the 70s through the 90s, and how much clamour there still is for those kinds of stories to return, even though that would require endless sequels or trying to establish a new IP completely, which is a big risk, having movies that use horror of not just a man with a weapon, a home invader, or some kind of dark and natural entity, and instead trying to use the personification of human emotion, greed, goals, and all kinds of other explorable topics to create horrific and terrifying stories that can be appreciated much more on an artistic level is something that really expanded the level of possibilities you can expect for what subjects a horror movie can tackle, and given us some of the highest rated horror movies of all time, even if I don't always agree with their ratings. I'm saying this because today I'm talking about Him, an American football horror movie which isn't really a sentence I thought I'd end up saying. But I'm sure you're familiar with the hubbub this movie's been stirring up. Directed by Justin Tipping, that's right, not Jordan Peele, as the posters and advertisements of the movie might have misled you, since instead it is produced by Jordan Peele's company Monkey Paw. Now, I'm going to level with you. I don't know jack shit about American football. I'm British, and I hate watching sports. Thankfully, the one sport I do play is badminton, which, as you all know, is the hardest sport of all. Even with my rigorous training routine to remain in perfect badmintoning shape though, I can still sympathise for the people that train to get good at much easier sports. Jokes aside, the mere concept of an American football horror movie, and yes, I will be calling it American football throughout the remainder of this video, because football is not whatever y'all be doing, and it also ain't called soccer. It's just such a unique premise that I was fully ready to check out this movie. I heard Jordan Peele was attached to it as well, and also got pretty hyped, but as a producer, he obviously doesn't have the same creative input that he did with the 3 movies he directed. But that wasn't enough for me to write the movie off, because I still wanted to see what the fuck an American football horror movie could turn out like. Him follows up-and-coming quarterback Cameron Cade, played by Tyreek Withers, who was also one of the main characters in I Know We Did Last Summer earlier this year, but I don't want to talk about that movie. Like, ever. Cade has spent all of his life loving American football, watching his favourite team, the Saviors, on TV with his family, being his brother, mother, and his father, who was the one encouraging him to play American football and to practice as much as possible to make it in the big leagues. A big inspiration for Cade is the star quarterback of the Saviors and greatest of all time, Isaiah White, played by comedy icon Marlon Wayans, who most horror fans will know as Shorty from the Scary Movie series, and who will be reprising his role in Scary Movie 6 next year. White was beloved by most American football fans, but especially the Saviors watchers. And we see a young Cade watching the Saviors win a big game due to White scoring a touchdown very late. After the game is called though, it shows that White has suffered a brutal and bloody leg injury, which Cade's father forces him to look at, saying that a real man makes sacrifices. Cade grows up to become essentially the most hyped underdog in the entire American Football League, with people even saying he might end up surpassing Isaiah White's status. But after one of White's superfans assaults Cade during a training session, he gets invited to a week of training with his decade-long football icon, and is soon about to realize that fame, fortune, and victory come at a much greater cost than you'd ever think. The first thing I want to praise are the visuals of the movie. Not only are there many beautiful shots of really great architecture and camera positioning, but the use of red and blue lighting also makes for a really distinct art style. Plus, they're both used for polar opposite reasons depending on the scene, whether it be creating a cool and calm atmosphere or showing a disparity between emotions of a specific character, or even just symbolizing the red and blue of America, and American football, I guess. But when it comes to the real intense scenes, you get hit with what is honestly a technical marvel, especially when paired with by far the most interesting thing about the movie, which is the use of X-rays. Cade's wound is shown several times throughout the movie and is meant to represent the strain he's putting on himself, but showing us his actual skull and not just the staples on his head really drives home the point much harder. And the way they film some of the training scuffles and injuries makes it look like a fucking Mortal Kombat brutality. It's hardcore. I also really found myself admiring the set design, the way they build the different rooms of the main location of the movie, being Isaiah White's house, the sprawling halls that are both endless and claustrophobic, the plenty of different rooms we see that all have completely different vibe, and barely even make sense when we see them one after another in a scene, especially towards the end of the movie when the vibe is completely different and so much darker and more mystical. It's really great stuff. The performances are also pretty solid. Even after I Know We Did Last Summer, which didn't really give me much of an opinion on him, Tyreek did a great job at making Cade a compelling protagonist who I wanted to see succeed, even as he started being tempted with the promise of greatness. Marlon Wayans is also brilliant and clearly understands the dynamic his character is meant to have, striking a balance between the fatherly mentor figure and the menacing drill sergeant who is equal parts anger at the potential being wasted in front of him, and self-righteousness at the fact that he will never be dethroned. He has plenty of early lines to cue you in on his true nature as well. that are pretty well done examples of foreshadowing. The structure of the plot is pretty basic, but I do like what it was going for. If you're familiar with the original screening of Superman, it had a Days of the Week structure with title cards that showed where the story was during said week. But this was removed after test screenings, and I still hate the test audience for that. But Him follows suit and has each day of the week focus on a different theme, the first day being fun, and the rest being something like resilience, leadership, and eventually sacrifice. Some of the title cards show up at really cool points of the movie. However, all these positives do come with a pretty equal amount of negatives. The first of which being the music, which just didn't land in any way in my opinion. A lot of it is R&B and rap, which for the most part isn't my bag, so maybe that's just me, but the rhythm and lyrics felt pretty cringe during needle drops, especially with the title song that plays over the credits going, I am H-I-M, I am H-I-M on repeat. This leads me to probably the biggest complaint that I've seen about the movie, being that the dialogue is, very hard to take seriously at times. I understand why a lot of people have been saying this, but I do feel like Marlon Wayans' natural chemistry, since he is the one usually delivering the lines that can be seen as cringe, carries through a lot of them. But I do agree that there really didn't need to be so many repeats of telling Cade he's trying to become him or the GOAT. Like, they could have just said the greatest or the king and people wouldn't have batted an eye. The GOAT motif does technically have a double meaning in the film, but it's not a super important one or one that gets focused on a lot, so who cares? I was also a little disappointed with the horror scenes of the movie, since a lot of them are just nondescript visions that Cade keeps having, and while dream sequences work for a movie like Weapons, I don't think it was really the play here. Play. Like, sports. There's only a few real segments of Cade actually being in danger, and I like those scenes and how they were set up in the beginning, but they're really far between. Alongside this though, the unsettling nature of the training he goes through was done really well. I just wish there was more bite to it. It felt like more was being promised than was delivered. There's also been a few complaints about the pacing of the movie, since if you view it from a certain lens, nothing really happens to progress the plot from the point of the first act to the last. And I didn't have a huge problem with that because it felt like the final test was being built up too decently. And I did actually quite like the third act. Even if I didn't fully grasp what the movie was trying to say, I could at least enjoy the events that turned out and at least catch the commentary on remaining humble in fame versus letting it go to your head and thinking yourself a god, and actually earning your way to the top rather than trying to leave everyone in the dust and calling them sacrifices. Plus, while it was subtle, I do like that it touches on toxic masculinity and parenting children to make them achieve the dreams you wish you did when you were that age. Honestly, looking at the movie from this angle, it makes sense why one of the highest rated and funniest Letterboxd reviews calls it the substance for men. Seriously, people on Letterboxd are so much funnier than I will ever be. Frankly though, I do think the hate for him was very overblown. While I have several issues with the movie, I understand why Marlon Wayans reacted the way he did to all the doomerism, and think he quite eloquently put into words why we shouldn't blindly trust critics. Some of my favourite movies of all time are not critical or even commercial favourites, and Him might not be one of those, but I'm sure there's plenty of people out there who will absolutely love it. And I'm sure the team loved working on it, especially filming those X-ray scenes. That would have been a blast to learn and see what you can do with them. It's also really enhanced the final act in my opinion, because you can see it as symbolism for finally seeing through the facade that people put up and looking in to see their true self. I hope we get to see more of the cast, and especially Tyreek, because it would suck for these to be his only horror performances. I think he could make a really compelling lead in more elevated horror movies, but I might be getting ahead of myself. With the cool stylization, set design, and technical aspects for him battling against the unique dialogue choices, lack of horrific aspects in favour of commentary, and debatably slow pacing, I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. There were several aspects I liked, but it is hard to ignore its flaws. That being said, I do respect it a lot for doing something unique, because it's hard to try and take a shot in the dark sometimes, and even if you miss, you'll leave something that could be re-explored, learned from, or expanded upon in the future. I'd love to see another movie use some kind of sports motif in order to explore corrupt stand culture in further detail, or examine a legend that is losing his speed. I feel like they could be really compelling topics. And that's the beauty of elevated horror. You can spin so many angles on simple subjects. And if you want to become the GOAT, in my heart, you should subscribe to see more of my content in the future. As of this October, I'm working on putting out only horror and spooky content as a challenge for myself and a celebration of my favourite genre. If that's your bag, stick around and get notified. And if you enjoyed me yapping about him, leave a like. If not, that's okay too. I'm still working on my huge project, by the way, like it's taking me a while to do it, and it doesn't help that my editing software has been messing up recently, but I'm trying to take it a bit at a time, even if it's just like 3 minutes of footage a day, because even that takes some time. Anyway though, I hope you stick around to see future content. But either way, have a great day, and remember to enjoy yourself. Most importantly though, bitches must have amnesia, because they keep forgetting I'm him.